It is 2 years after the October the 7th, 2023 attacks in Israel by Hamas that left 1,200 people dead and saw over 200 hostages taken from Israel. Now, there's commemoration on both sides of the strip. What began as a military response has become one of the deadliest and most destructive conflicts of the 21st century. Now, here's the toll 2 years on. 67,000 Palestinians have been killed. That's about 1 in every 33 people in Gaza. Among them, over 20,000 children, meaning a child has been killed nearly every hour for the past 2 years. Thousands more remain missing, likely buried under rubble. At least 169,000 people have been injured, with many left permanently disabled. In Israel, around 2,000 people have died, including 913 soldiers, and over 20,000 troops have been wounded. The scale of displacement is staggering. Nearly 1.9 million Palestinians, that's about 90% of Gaza's population, have been forced from their homes. Whole neighborhoods have vanished. 92% of all homes and 88% of businesses have been destroyed, with total damage estimated at $55 billion. When Hamas fighters stormed southern Israel 2 years ago, they took roughly 240 hostages. Since then, 140 have been freed through swaps, 8 rescued by Israeli forces, but 48 remain in Gaza, with at least 28 believed dead. The bodies of 57 hostages have been recovered. Gaza's healthcare system is barely functioning. At least 125 hospitals and clinics have been hit, and 22 have shut down entirely. Only 14 hospitals still operate, all of them partially. More than 1,700 medical and aid workers have been killed, and Israeli forces have detained 28 doctors, including top surgeons and specialists. Israel's blockade and bombardment have turned food into a weapon, and that's according to the United Nations. At least 459 people, including 154 children, have died from starvation. More than 641,000 now face catastrophic levels of hunger, and tens of thousands of children suffer from acute malnutrition. Since May, over 2,600 people have been killed while trying to collect food aid. According to reports, water is now a luxury. Nearly 89% of Gaza's water and sanitation system has been destroyed. More than 96% of households lack safe water, and many people survive on less than 6 liters a day, far below emergency levels. Also, according to reports, Gaza's schools and universities have been devastated. More than 658,000 children and 87,000 university students are out of class. Over 2,300 educational facilities, including 63 university buildings, have been reduced to rubble. Now, Israel is holding more than 10,800 Palestinians in its prisons. The report says they include 450 children and 87 women. Over 3,600 are held without charge of trial under administrative detention. Gaza is said to now be the most dangerous place on earth to be a journalist. Nearly 300 media workers have been killed, more than in World War I, World War II, Vietnam, and Afghanistan combined. Foreign media are barred from entering, and Palestinian journalists are often targeted simply for telling the story. And 2 years into the war, Gaza is a landscape of ruin. Its people trapped between bombardment, starvation, and displacement. Right, let's bring you more on this as we continue to look at the situation there in the Middle East. 2 years after the October the 7th attacks, grief over Israel's victim is still marked against the backdrop of war raging next door. What was once a chaotic scene of tents, debris, and burned-out cars is now carefully tended memorial. Rows of plaques, flowers, and candles stretch beneath the trees, each marking a life lost. But time has also changed Israel itself. The unity born in those first days has faded, replaced by deep political divisions, as Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, once hailed as Mr. Security, struggles to convince Israelis he did not fail them. And Joining me now is partner Gainful Solutions, Stephen Hayes. He joins us from the U.S., that's Washington, in the U.S. Good to have you join us.
Thank you. It's good to see you again, Precious.
So as we speak, it seems like a grim coincidence that there is a peace talks going on, or talks on the planned proposal going on, as the 2 years of the attacks in Israel is also being marked. I just want to get your thoughts on what has played out, in the last 2 years, in a conflict that people thought would have ended by now.
Well, I think that we were, all of us, including me, were optimistic. I didn't think that it would go for 2 years. I thought it would be fairly quick, and I think that was because many of us overestimated the Israeli army and also underestimated the resistance of Hamas and many of the Palestinians that were not associated with Hamas. So I think that has taken everyone by surprise. I think that it's gone so long has also been discouraging to the rest of the planet. It's been a painful process to have to watch the suffering, and yet it's been without end. The fact that it's finally, I should say, maybe, possibly, coming to an end is hopeful, but I think there's still quite a few points that have to be resolved in this. I think that the U.S. intervening has been helpful at this stage. I think it's not necessarily been as strong as supportive in the war as it could have been in the past, but I think now it's moving forward. The driver, of course, is President Trump, and for whatever reasons, but nevertheless, it is being driven forward, and there is right now more hope, I think, than we've had in the last 2 years that some resolution may be coming.
Do you see a commitment from both sides to the proposal, considering what the sticking points are?
In reality, I think that there isn't a strong commitment. I think there's a great deal of cynicism, certainly, and obviously neither side trusts the other at all. I don't even think there's a 1% chance of trust, but I think it's going to be difficult. But what's different here is that each of the Arab nations that are involved or peripherally involved in terms of support for Hamas or the regional peace process, each one is now weighing in positively that there needs to be some resolution. And I think that process has been interesting. I think that's a process that the U.S. has managed. So I think there is some hope on that. I think there's still some very key points, though, that have to be decided. 5 of them that I think there's not going to be a quick answer in the next few days. I think it's going to take some time to resolve that. I hope I'm wrong. I hope there's a quick resolution, but I don't think that there will be.
And how long? Because the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has said that this could only take a matter of days, and it would depend on Hamas. He said if Hamas is serious. But for you, how long do you think it would take to trash out the nuts and bolts of the proposal?
Well, I think it's going to take longer than a few days. The proposal essentially is not dramatically different from past proposals. What's been added is the economic development plan, a security force, and a peace board. The composition of that peace board is that question. I don't think there's going to be an easy resolution of who's on the peace board, since Hamas will be definitely excluded, at least as far as Israel and the U.S. go. There's also going to be who's going to be on the stabilization force. And what is that going to be? Is the Palestinian Authority going to be allowed to be in? Which the U.S. has said yes. Israel has said no. How will Hamas disarm? So I think it's going to take longer than 2 or 3 days. Even President Trump has said, well, this week could be solved by this weekend. I think that's going to be very, very difficult, but there are talks going on in Cairo now to go over those 5 really major sticking points. I think it's hard for me to imagine that it's going to be by this weekend complete. What it would mean is that Hamas would have to agree to all conditions, and I don't think there's going to be much flexibility on Israel or the U.S. side to accommodate Hamas.
So as we speak, there is an ICJ and an ICC judgments against Israel. None of them have been implemented. And as we look at this even more broadly, what has this conflict taught us about the global governance structure and its institutions, along with the ability to hold sovereign nations accountable?
Well, I think it's taught us the same thing as it's taught us that the UN. The UN is the United Nations is an ideal. The ICJ is an ideal. There are people who would like to see the ideal, but it's a long way from being reality. Also, the problem with the ICJ is that Israel and the United States are not members of that, so it's non-binding. It's taught us that we still have as a civilization a long way to go to find ways to work together. I think that's probably the biggest lesson. But they are not effective. They're not binding, and they are say a moral compass at times. And at times you'd argue that the UN is not. Nevertheless, it does say that we've still got a long way to go as a human species to come together more easily.
So Israel was attacked first, and it lost about 1,200 of its citizens, and then 250 taken hostage. And then it attacked Gaza, attacked Hamas, and then it became, a Gaza war. But many would say that Israel's response has not, when it comes to diplomacy, has not been a proportional response. But both sides right now are looking for justice, and I'm wondering what justice will look like for both Israel and Palestine.
I don't know that you have justice at the end of any war. Even the so-called just wars of World War II and so forth. There are always going to be sides that will not see justice. That's a reality. Families who have had people killed in World War II or Vietnam or whatever. The hope for justice for all is not going to come out of this, especially when both sides have such deep, long-standing hatred of one another. So I think that a just side right now would be the best possible is that you're going to have a situation where they can live in relative peace with one another and the economies can begin to grow. I think that's going to be the best possible solution. You are not going to see justice in the sense that everyone wants in some ways. I think it's more the combination of trying to learn to live together, and that would be the most just result, I think.
So we find that in this peace agreement or proposal, the governance structure in terms of a temporary committee or council to govern Gaza is included, but nothing about rebuilding Gaza has been included in that proposal. Is that not a major omission?
Well, there is some reference to building an economic plan to rebuilding Gaza. I think the major problem is exactly the opposite, is the fact that the governing board is going to be a major hurdle, because who's going to be on that, who selects that board, who is really going to do that. Some are already criticizing it as a former colonial model, but I think that's going to be the hook that's really going to undercut this if it's not resolved. The economic plan is very vague, and you're right in that regard, but it is calling for an economic zone, and here is where I think my suspicions and somewhat experience internationally is that I think the other Arab countries are going to be brought into this as important partners in economic development. And that there is a referral to that in the document, the 20-point plan, but it's vague, and by necessity, I think the plan, it has to be vague at this stage. It's general principles, where it's going to head, and then I think the economic plan is I think, secondary, but it is mentioned in the 20-point plan.
So I'll put you on hold, Mr. Hayes, and when we return after the break, we will continue the conversation. Stay with us, everyone. You're watching What Now? On What Now, we are paying attention or focusing solely on 2 years after the Israel's attack Hamas attacks on Israel, and what has become of that development now as we see a devastation in the Middle East. We'll be speaking with a partner, Gainful Solutions, Stephen Hayes. He joins us from Washington, United States. Good to have you join us. Thanks for staying with us.
Thank you.
So let's get back to the conversation on the peace talks. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, he has always said that his end game is total victory. And he also has a very different kind of survival in mind. He wants to preserve his power. He wants to keep on postponing his trial for corruption. He also wants to win elections due next year. Could this drive how he responds to the final agreement?
Well, I think that in his mind, he's going to certainly, if there is a final agreement.
I wonder why.
There's interference coming from you. Okay.
I wonder why. Hey, but it's 3:18 in Nigeria. Like,
thank you. There was interference coming in. I'm sorry. I think Netanyahu's plan is survival, but I think that in the end, his victory will be that Hamas has no role in a future Palestinian or future Gaza. And I think that's where he will declare a victory if this does come about. He has a long uphill climb, obviously, his trial that has been put on hold until his election coming up. But I don't think those are his worries right now. I think the worries right now is to be able to declare victory out of this, which would mean that Hamas has absolutely no role. If Hamas has a role, then he can't declare victory.
The possibility of Hamas without a role, how optimistic are you about that? And the idea that Hamas can be completely obliterated? What's the possibility that this group will not emerge? Because Israel seems to be so confident that it has at least reduced the capacity of Hamas, and many reports say that's overly exaggerated.
Well, Israel has been overconfident, and I think that was part of the problem of why this war has been so long. They got into a war that they thought they could finish very easily. Hamas is going to be very difficult to disappear, in the sense that it is a concept, it is an idea, it does have some percentage of Palestinians behind it. It's probably less so than it was 2 years ago, because I think a lot of people have been, certainly within Palestine, within Gaza, I should say, have been disillusioned by Hamas's leadership as well. It's brought up about the destruction of Gaza, essentially. But it does represent a part of the population, and it has been the resistance. It has been the only resistance, really. And so it's going to be very hard for Hamas to be completely excluded. I was listening to interviews from the Palestinian Authority as well, and an official connected to it has also said that Hamas may play a role later as they come together. So I think that's still open-ended.
And let's look at the broader picture. President Trump wants to revive his ambition to broker a grand bargain in the Middle East. You remember the Abraham Accords that he started, at his first term. He wants that the center of that would be a rapprochement between Israel and Saudi Arabia. But the Saudis have made it very clear in public statements that they cannot happen, or that cannot happen without a clear and irreversible path to an independent Palestinian state. And that's something that Israel objects to. I mean, what are the chances of reinvigorating the Abraham Accords?
I think the chances are fairly good. Saudi Arabia has said certainly that you have to see a Palestinian state. I think the Trump plan, which Saudi Arabia supposedly has agreed to behind the scenes and is supporting, and would be part of the forces that go into, part of the security forces that go into Gaza, supposedly. I think Saudi Arabia wants this very badly. And so I think that they're going to look for some, let's call wiggle room as well, some flexibility. I think they will continue to verbally support the formation of a Palestinian state, which is clearly some years ahead of us. But I think that they want a more integrated region. It helps them, and also they need a buffer against Iran, and so I think a more united front is going to help them. So I think Saudi Arabia behind the scenes would be far more flexible than publicly stated. I think that President Trump would not have moved forward had it not been for some Saudi support and encouragement as well. The Gulf states are behind this too in some ways, and so it's. I think there's a good possibility. This is what a number of key players want, and I think there's a good possibility of that happening if we can get through to some type of an agreement. I wouldn't call it a total peace plan, but it certainly would be an agreement, and particularly if the hostages are released. I think that's going to be a big step forward as well. Again,
one of the sticking points, because that's the only bargaining chip that Hamas has at the moment, how willing they are, how willing they are to release the hostage. We'll continue to monitor in the coming days. Thank you so much for your time. As always, partner Gainful Solutions, Stephen Hayes.
Thank you, and an honor as always. Thank you. Have a good day.